It's time for your Low Country Real Estate Market Update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good Saturday morning, Low Country. This is Brian Beatty with the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks for joining me this morning. If this is your first time tuning in, we talk all things real estate here on this show. We take national, regional, and local news, and we make sure that we apply that to you and your situation so that if you're thinking of buying or selling a home this year, you have the information you need to make an informed decision. I am joined in the studio this morning by Bill Sandvig of Movement Mortgage and Andrew Muller of Mappus Insurance Agency. We were live in the studio last week and had one caller, was happy to help them out. But we'd like your calls this morning. We're going to talk about a variety of things. We're going to talk first about some real estate horror stories because we've heard plenty of them this year. So if you want to call in and share with us some of your experiences, the phone number here is 843-556-1250, 556-1250. And wanted to start out the show just, we talk a lot about just very serious real estate things here on this program, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk a little bit about some of the horror stories that we experience from time to time in being in real estate. Not necessarily funny, but just a bit bizarre, and I've actually got some stories that I'll share with you if you've got some time that I printed off online that are just, they kind of make you wonder, really? Did that really happen? So I thought I'd start it off with probably the biggest horror story that we've had this year and for the past 6 months or so, and that's the Biggert Waters Reform Act of 2012. All this flood insurance stuff that we've had to deal with over the past 6 months. We've I think, all at this point heard some stories of people that have had their flood insurance premiums go from, maybe $1,000, $1,500 a year to $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year. I have one particular client that has a home on Folly Beach, and his premium went from $4,000 a year to an estimated $53,000 a year if you were to stay with the National Flood Insurance Program. So we've heard all kinds of horror stories when it comes to flood insurance this year. But we had some very big news happen just yesterday. And Andrew, I thought that it'd be nice if you would share that as kind of a rebuttal to all the horror stories we've heard about flood insurance recently.
Absolutely. So, as we talked about last week, there was a bill that was passed in both the House and the Senate, and it was called the Homeowners Flood Insurance Affordability Act, and it was to help replace some of the provisions of the Biggert Waters bill that has been causing so many increases for many homeowners. And yesterday, the president finally signed this into law. And so that was a very big step because the president was very much against any sort of reform to the Biggert Waters Reform Act. And we got a little nervous because it was passed by both the House and the Senate, and it sat around for a week, and the president hadn't signed it into law yet. And so we were very nervous. We were saying, is he going to do this or not? So we weren't for sure.
I remember us sitting here saying, I'm not entirely sure that this is an optimistic outlook for changes to the flood insurance environment. But I'm glad it got pushed through.
Yeah, but we are not out of the woods 100% yet with this bill that was signed into law. There's still going to be probably 1 to maybe 3 months before it actually kicks in and we can actually use this law. So buyers of properties can take back the subsidized rate and versus going to that full risk rate, because FEMA has to figure out how they're going to implement, and so it's not 100% done yet. But the big thing is that the bill was passed, signed into law, so it is coming. We just have to wait a little bit longer.
Thank the Lord.
I have a question. Does the new act revoke Biggert Waters? Are people going to get refunded premiums they might have paid?
Well, it doesn't revoke just all of Biggert Waters. It revokes two main pieces of Biggert Waters, and that was the buy and sell provision. So if you bought or sold a pre-firm property in a pre-firm for Charleston County is, built before 1971, some say 74, that provision where you would go to the full risk rate immediately when you purchase the house was removed, and the new buyer can start at that subsidized rate. They're still going to take increases every year, but those are going to be pretty manageable increases to where that property makes sense for them to go ahead and purchase it. So that was removed, and then the grandfathering status was supposed to be removed from Biggert Waters. They have completely canceled that, and that means that if your house was built in compliance at the time, you are grandfathered into your rates. Biggert Waters said, we're going to remove that, and which this just gets me. So the government says, okay, yes, you complied with us, you did everything you were supposed to do, but now we're going to penalize you because you're not built to today's compliance,
right? Which
is absolutely ridiculous. And so they remove that.
Right. And it's kind of like, when we put properties under contract and I represent a seller, and an inspector goes through and they look at all the things that are wrong with the house, and let's say it was a house that was built in, it doesn't matter. Let's say it was the 1970s, 80s, even 1990s. There are going to be differences between code requirements for electrical and plumbing and so on and so forth today versus when the house was built. And so I think a lot of buyers are under the impression that the seller has to bring that dated house up to today's standards, and that's not the case. But with real estate, when we put properties under contract and we sold them as it relates to flood insurance, which is what we're talking about right now. If you have questions about that, please call in 556-1250, 843-556-1250. You used to just assume the owner's flood insurance policy. You had the policy transferred over to the new buyer, and you assumed that premium rate, which was a very easy way of doing things. And from the way I understand it, and Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems as though the premiums are still going to increase in some scenarios. But the nice thing is that it can only increase by up to 18% if it's your primary residence, and 25% if it's a second home or anything else of the current policy amount. So let's just use simple math. Let's say your flood insurance premium is $1,000 a year and it's your primary residence. It could go up to as much as $1,180 next year.
Correct. But it also could only be a 5% increase.
Right.
So it's anywhere between 5% and 18%, but it will definitely be 5%. They said every policy that's pre-firm receiving subsidized rates will go up at least 5%. I want to go back to, because I never did answer your question, Bill. So if somebody has purchased a home since Biggert Waters became effective, and they paid the higher premium, they paid the full risk rate premium, they will be able to get a refund. So FEMA will go back and, credit their policy back to that subsidized rate, and they will get that refund of the difference in return. However, in everything that I have read, there is nothing in the Biggert Waters, certainly, and nothing in this new law that gives a time frame as far as how long FEMA has to get the money back to a homeowner. We're being told that it could be up to a year to get that returned premium back. So it certainly, it's not a perfect law, but it's still in the works. But yeah, it could be up to a year before they get that unearned premium back.
Would someone that has a non-subsidized policy, instead of waiting for this to happen, maybe go get a new flood policy under the new law? I mean, is that possible for them to write a new policy and get the cheaper rate now that subsidy's back?
Well, like I said, the subsidy isn't in effect yet. Even though the president signed it into law, you can't go out today and get that subsidized rate back. What they could do is go out and get a private market flood insurance policy and potentially pay less, and they would be fine there.
Yeah, Andrew, I want to talk with you about this for a minute. We're talking flood insurance here on the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. If you have questions, give us a call, 843-556-1250. We had mentioned live last weekend that there was somewhere between a $25 billion and a $35 billion debt associated with the National Flood Insurance Program, which makes us all laugh, because I just imagine being a fly on the wall at that roundtable discussion where it said, all right, Bill, how much in the hole are we? Oh, I don't know, 25 billion, 30 billion, 35 billion, somewhere in there. I mean, give me a break. But what we talked about is that the flood insurance premiums for some of these higher risk properties certainly seem fairly low when you take into consideration the fact that prior to 1971 in Charleston County, if you really wanted to, you could have built a house on a slab at the beach, right?
Correct.
I mean, you really could have if you wanted to. So that property will certainly be a higher risk for flood insurance than the house next door that built it correctly on pilings. So what it talks about is that, yes, it seems as though for some of these properties, flood insurance premiums need to increase because it just is common sense. But what this will do over time, which I'm hopeful of, is it will create the emergence of new players in the private market insurance field for flood insurance. Because right now, the majority of people that get it are through the National Flood Insurance Program, which is regulated by FEMA, which is, of course, a government oversight. So, or government entity, rather. So my hope with this is that over time, we'll start to see new people enter the private market insurance so that it can get privatized.
Absolutely.
Let's focus on capitalism here, and let's have some companies compete and bring some options to the table that are not government funded.
Correct. And so as you were just talking about, say that beachfront property that's an older property that is built on a slab, or it could have been built on a raised foundation, but then they enclosed that foundation in to provide for more living space. FEMA, before the bigger waters, you could go out and get a subsidized policy and pay, maybe $2,500 to $3,000 for a beachfront property for flood insurance. The private market says, no way, there's no way we're going to insure that for that much. It just doesn't make sense. But now that these rates will continue to go up till they reach the full risk rate, a private market come in and say, hey, you know what? We'll write it for 30% of what the National Flood Insurance will write it at the full risk rate, because now we can actually potentially make profit off of this. And so it absolutely would bring the private market in, and with more private market, there's going to be more competition. The more competition will help drive down the rates. So 3 to 4, 5 years from now, the flood insurance market is going to look completely different. We're going to have, your standard insurance carriers vying for the piece of the flood insurance pie,
which is largely untapped right now by private markets.
Absolutely.
Very cool. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. We are live in the studio today, so if you have any questions real estate related, I am a real estate agent here, Andrew Muller with Mappus Insurance, and Bill Sandvig of Movement Mortgage. So practically any question you have, we can answer for you, and we'd love to hear from you. Phone number here, 843-556-1250. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Stay tuned for more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. And we are live in the studio this morning. I'm joined by Andrew Muller of Mappus Insurance Agency and Bill Sandvig of Movement Mortgage. If you'd like to reach me at any point, best way to do that is to go to my website, www.listingsincharleston.com. And on that website, you can search the MLS, read some testimonials from past clients, of course, read my resume, take a look at lists of properties that I've sold, properties I have on the market, and then learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee. If you're considering selling your home, I'll sell it in 59 days or less, or sell it for half my commission. So That website again, www.listingsincharleston.com, or feel free to give me a call, 843-345-1273. So the theme of this show is real estate horror stories. We've never done this before, and I've been on this program here on 1250 WTMA for over a year at this point. And we always, I think do a very good job of informing the public on the real estate market. We're very data-driven on this program, like to give you stats, like to tell you what's selling in the area. So never really done anything like this before, but I thought it'd be kind of fun just to throw some off-the-wall stories out there. Of course, doing so that we can learn from them. And Andrew, I know that you have somebody that you know that had a fairly interesting thing happen to them recently, and I thought it'd be funny if you shared that story, because we were talking off air, and I thought, man, that'd be great if you'd be willing to share that online or on air.
Sure. So, being the insurance piece of a lot of home closings, you hear about a lot of various stories that are going on, because you have to make sure that you have the right closing date on the insurance policy. And so I was working, is actually a friend of mine who was closing on a house, and is very, we were working with a lender. I think he might have been a newer lender in the business, and he did, you could kind of tell he didn't have all the answers. He wasn't for sure what he was talking about. He continued to come back for additional questions for the client of ours, and you could tell the client just kept getting frustrated more and more, because he kept coming back 5, 6, 7, 8 times for additional information. And this was a house that they were building, so they had known months and months in advance that they were closing on this house, roughly around a certain date. And so it wasn't like this was a last-minute deal they were trying to put together.
Right.
And as we kept getting closer, I kept asking him, I was like, okay, when's the closing so I can bind the insurance policy for it? And it kept getting, we had a date, and then we're not for sure. I think we're going to push it back. And so I speak to the lender. I give him a call, and I say, hey, man, when is this closing happening? I want to make sure we get the insurance policy over to the closing attorney. And he's like, gosh, I haven't heard from the client. So I call the client up, and I go, hey, I just spoke with the lender. He said he's not for sure when the date is. And he's like, and so the client says, we got so frustrated with the lender because he ended up telling us we were not going to be able to close on the day we wanted to close after months and months of getting him all the information. So we just took him out of the equation, and we ended up paying cash. And it was just
bold move.
Yeah. Very, you almost feel bad for all the work the lender did, but at the same time, I mean, if he's not doing his job right, just thinking he's going to get the business just because maybe he thought that they had to use a lender. I don't know.
Right.
But they ended up paying cash for it and took him out of the equation, and the lender had no idea.
Well, I'm sure they didn't want to do that. I mean, obviously the intent was to get financed and borrow the money rather than pay cash, right?
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you, as a top real estate agent in this market, I've been in the top 1% since 2009, and I've seen my share of issues at the closing table with financing. So before I kind of get into another story here, if you guys have questions or if you have stories that you'd like to share, a little caveat, please don't mention any real estate agents' names or any lenders' names. No names, please. But feel free to give us a call. We'd love to hear a story from our listeners. 843-556-1250 is the phone number here, 843-556-1250. I have had plenty of issues over my career as a residential real estate agent with getting lenders to respond to dates on the contract. Whenever we submit an offer and the seller accepts that, we have specific timelines that we have to abide by in our contract. As it relates to financing, we have to apply for financing within a certain date, and we have to receive loan approval within a certain date. And then, of course, we have to close on time. And I can tell you that this was probably, I think at this point it was about 6 years ago. And I was working with a bank here locally. This was a property that my wife and I were purchasing. We had put down 20% in a lease to purchase back in 2006 and leased it for a while, but had an extended closing date on the contract. So the closing date was about 18 months away. The portion of the payment went to the reduction of the principal on that mortgage. And then in 18 months from then, we were going to have a second closing where it would be refinanced into, or not technically refinanced, but we would close under our name. Well, the day before closing, after working with this particular lender for 60 days, they said, Brian, I'm sorry, I hate to do this to you because I know that you're going to closing tomorrow, but we can't do your loan. And there was a moment of silence on the phone where I said, let me get this straight. We've paid for the appraisal. You've given me every indication that we're going to closing tomorrow. The attorneys worked up a settlement statement based on the loan package that you sent them. How is it that you can submit a loan package and then rescind it and say you can't do the loan? And they said, I'm sorry, I'm not sure where the ball was dropped. We're looking into it, but for right now, please don't go to closing tomorrow because we can't fund your loan. And we were putting down an additional we had almost 50% equity in the property at the time that we were closing on it. There was absolutely no reason why a loan couldn't have been done. I mean, literally no reason. Great credit, good income, 50% equity. It was the most dumbfounded I have been probably since that point with regard to a lending scenario at closing. It shocked me.
Bill, how does something like that happen?
It's simple. Everyone knows in real estate, last minute just doesn't work. And when lenders get busy and underwriters get busy and excuses start flowing, last minute happens. The straw that broke my back for my last lender was last minute wasn't an exception. It was the norm.
Right.
And you just can't operate in a contractual experience with last minute. And I'm going to spin off of your example where buyers, I'm just going to pay this with cash. Screw you guys. I'm done with this. We have situations where people don't have that option. And one of the last things that's it, I'm out, I need to find a new home with my last company was you often experience a stacked closing, which is what we call you have a buyer that is buying a house. The seller is now going to go buy the next house, and possibly the person that's selling that house is going to go buy another house. So you have 6 families involved in a transaction buying and selling homes, and there's a 9 o'clock closing, a 12 o'clock closing, and a 3 o'clock closing. Mm-hmm. Well, if the lender isn't on the board with that first loan, and they talk about it's Friday morning and sorry, we're not quite ready, you just put 3 families on a Friday in a moving truck to Monday.
Right.
And that is too much stress for me, too much stress for all the families you're impacting. And talk about a horror story, people moving cross country, people moving from wherever to be in Charleston, and you've got 4 or 5 families just wondering where they're going to go find a hotel room. So it's all about last minute, and that's why the company I'm at with Movement Mortgage, we are all about upfront. We don't even look at closing dates. We look at from the time that application comes in, we want that package done in 7 business days.
Yeah.
I don't care if the closing is 30 days off. I don't care if it's 60 days off. I'm going to get you done in 7 business days because last minute surprises, we just can't have them.
Right.
Yeah. And to speak about Movement Mortgage, I got an email yesterday from a lender in Bill's office on a closing. They already have the loan number and everything lined up on a closing that's occurring like 60 days from now. And so everything's put to bed. There's no worries on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the point of the way we operate is, and we have to retrain the partners that we work with, the attorneys we work with. They wait, why are you asking for title work? This thing isn't happening for 30 days. And we say, I know we just got this contract, but we're going to get this thing done, and you're not going to have to worry about it. This is better for you, attorney. Don't worry. Get it off your desk. Give it to us now because we're going to make everything smooth. We're not going to have any last minute surprises. We don't have time for it, and we don't have the energy for it because last minute surprises just don't work.
Right, and that's one of the several reasons why I do business with Movement Mortgage. And this it's not necessarily a sales pitch, but at the same time it is because we're talking about real estate horror stories this hour, and the best way to avoid them is to get your stuff done up front. Communicate. Wow, what a novel idea in the real estate industry when we're faced with consistently agents, buyers, sellers, almost anybody in the equation at any point in the time, if they're lazy, if they don't get it done, we're looking at delays. We're looking at people that have made plans that are then unable to move forward with those plans because they're relying on someone else in the process to get it done timely and correctly. So I tell you what, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, I've got a few more horror stories that I want to tell you about. But then I want to focus our last segment on flipping real estate. A lot of people are asking me, are you still flipping properties in this market since it's a seller's market now? And the answer is absolutely yes. So we want to take your calls. Anything you want to discuss real estate related, we're here live in the studio. Phone number here, 843-556-1250. So give us a call, and then when we come back for our third segment, we'll take your call first. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. That's lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com.
The Big Talker, WTMA.
You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. Thank you for joining me this morning. I am joined in the studio today by Andrew Muller of Mappus Insurance Agency and Bill Sandvig of Movement Mortgage. We are live. We'd love to take your calls. Our number here is 843-556-1250. The theme of this show is real estate horror stories. This is something we haven't done in the past. We'd like to hear your stories. We'd like to hear if there's an opportunity for us to help you through that, or for anybody that's listening and they hear a horror story, maybe we can help them learn from others, not necessarily misfortunes, but just some of the issues that we have to deal with in this real estate industry, in this market. I was thinking as we were taking a break about some of the different types of horror stories I hear. And one of the things that I hear on a fairly consistent basis, not necessarily a horror story per se, but we're having a big problem right now with real estate agents effectively pricing houses. We are in a seller's market in the majority of Charleston County and really the Tri-County, but there are some specific markets in Charleston County that are just hot, hot, hot. Downtown Charleston, Mount Pleasant in a certain price range, Isle of Palms, there's just such a lack of inventory in some areas on Isle of Palms that you put your house on the market and it'll be sold fairly quickly. I can almost guarantee it. So while I'm on that topic, just really quickly, if you have a home that you're interested in selling in the Old Village, if you have beachfront condos or beachfront property on the Isle of Palms or Wild Dunes, West Ashley, up to $500,000, or anything waterfront up to $1 million in Mount Pleasant. I have buyers right now, and I am having a big struggle finding them some good inventory. So if you have any interest in selling your house, you want to know what your house is worth, please go to my website. That website is www.listingsincharleston.com, and a little window will pop up where you can contact me. It'll actually send me a text message, and we can chat right there on my website.
And if you're out there, give Brian a call, because he can pair you up to those borrowers before you even have to list your house. And when you've got something that people want, you might be getting more for your house than you're thinking. So give him a call.
I've actually got 3 separate transactions going on right now where I was able to match up a seller I was talking to and a buyer I was talking to without it even hitting the MLS. So it's kind of a win-win-win for everybody. So again, that website, listingsincharleston.com. And if you want to call into the studio, our website here, our phone number here, 843-556-1250. What I was saying is we're having a lot of difficulty right now with sellers, at least, in finding real estate agents that can properly price their house. I have a waterfront condo in downtown Charleston that is really unlike anything available right now. It's at the very end of Sanssouci Street in Wagner Terrace. Nobody really knows this because nobody, I think, drives back there, but there's a waterfront condo project. It's just called Sanssouci Condominiums. And the particular condo that I have is gorgeous. It's a 2-bed, 2-bath, amazing views of the Ashley River from almost every room in the condo. And she interviewed 3 agents, and it was amazing to me the spread in pricing that she got from the 3 different real estate agents. One agent quoted her $199,000, and if it doesn't sell in 2 weeks, that she drop it to $189,000, and if it doesn't sell in 2 weeks, to drop it to $179,000. So a $20,000 price drop over a month, which is 10% of the list price. I thought that was crazy. And then she had another agent from a downtown firm state that she should list it for $500,000. So she called me, she heard the radio program, and she said, I would like to know what the heck is going on with the real estate industry here, because I have gotten quotes that range $300,000 on my condo. One thinks it's worth $200,000. One thinks it's worth 2.5 times that. How is that possible? How does that happen? So we sat down, and obviously I walked through her property, and beautiful place, took a look at the comps. There are no comps. There is nothing like that in downtown Charleston. So I said, all right, here's what we need to do. We need to take a look at properties that are listed in different price ranges and act as if we're a buyer. And let's see where it makes sense for us to price this condo if we're looking in different price points. Ultimately, we settled on $325,000, which I think was right on the money for that condo. And we had it on the market for less than a week. And this week we got 2 offers on it, and we're under contract at full price.
Imagine if she had taken that $200,000 and we're going to step you down every 2 weeks.
Unbelievable. And what's really crazy, Bill, is that was the agent that she worked with on a separate project. So I don't know how he missed the mark so much on pricing that property, but that's in my opinion, that's unacceptable.
I mean, it's amazing to me. She is that sounds good away from walking away from $125,000.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see it, we don't see it too often, but we do see it. And so what I want to talk about, not necessarily this segment, but next segment, so we can dedicate some time to it, is flipping properties. How do you find those really good deals? Does it still make sense to invest a lot of time and energy in looking for properties to flip? Well, the answer is yes. I'm working with an investor out of Las Vegas right now who does probably 200 deals a year in Vegas, and he's picked up over a dozen properties in Charleston. They're almost finished being renovated. In fact, about half of them are. We have them on the market right now. They've been listed for a very short amount of time. They're getting a bunch of showings, and those will probably sell, and he's going to make a very nice profit margin on those deals. So I want to talk about that next. But I really want to encourage people that are listening right now to give us a call if they have any questions about flood insurance, lending, just real estate sales in general. We'd love an opportunity to speak with you and see if there's a way for us to help you. The phone number here is 843-556-1250. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250. And if you want to reach out to me at any point during or after this program, my phone number is 843-345-1273. And my website is www.listingsincharleston.com, where you can submit a little message to me if you're thinking about selling your house. And if you click on the Sellers tab, you can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee, where I promise I'll sell your home in 59 days or less, or I'll sell it for half my commission. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Visit Brian Beatty's website at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. WTMA. Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Good Saturday morning. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. We are live in the studio this morning. The phone number here, 843-556-1250. And I'm joined by Andrew Muller of Mappus Insurance and Bill Sandvig of Movement Mortgage. And we're going to move to a live caller, Richard in Hollywood. Hey, Richard, are you with us?
Yes.
Thanks for calling in. How can we help you?
I was just listening to your program. What is the mean water level have to be before the code before you can start building?
Well, that's going to depend on the flood zone that you're in. But Andrew, I'm going to let you answer that.
Yeah, if you're speaking about flood insurance, it honestly it varies property to property. So it depends on.
I'm in flood zone AX.
You're in both an A and an X zone?
No, AX. I asked my what do you call it?
Okay, well, if you're in A zone...
No, AX.
Okay, but for all intents and purposes, all A zones are, relatively the same, but then it goes to if you are in an A12 or an A13,
right? And
that means that you have to build your house to be compliant for flood insurance at least to that 12 or 13 foot level, and that's above the base flood elevation, and that's 12 feet above sea level, or whatever that might be for each particular property. It varies, so it really depends on what the base flood elevation is for that property that you're speaking of.
It sounds like you need to get more information, maybe a conversation.
Certainly. I mean, if you want to give me a call off air, I'd be more than happy to help you. But the only way that we're really going to be able to figure out how high you need to build or how high your current house is in relation to the base flood elevation is by looking at the elevation certificate. And if you don't have one, then you would need to go out and get one. And that's the only way we can really figure it out.
Yeah, let me call you off air then. What's your number?
Certainly. Well, shoot me an email, andrew@mappusinsurance.com.
At Mappus, M-A-P-U-S?
M-A-P-P-U-S,
right.
Insurance.com. And I'd be happy to help you.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling in, Richard. Cool. Glad we could help him. If, again, you have questions, 843-556-1250 is the phone number here in the studio, and we are live. All right, so let me transition into flipping properties. I had mentioned last segment that there are still plenty of opportunities to purchase property for under fair market value, put in some sweat equity, and then resell it. Very rarely do we see properties that are in close to move-in condition that you can buy at a good enough rate to buy it, pay your closing costs, put a little bit of money into it, put it back on the market, pay closing costs, pay commission, and then have enough left over to make it worth your while. So the real opportunities to flip property are kind of the programs that you see on TV where houses need serious work. In fact, I would say that the more work they need, the better your chances are of making a profit on that flip. I have flipped several properties personally. I have worked with dozens and dozens of investors to flip property. I'm working with several right now to do that very thing. So I want to tell you what I've kind of put together for listeners in this show. I've put together essentially a toolkit of, if you're thinking of flipping a property, I have a list of things that you really must do in order to have your home be FHA and VA eligible, which I think makes sense when you're flipping property. You want to have it marketable to as many buyers as possible. Then I have a list of things you should do, and this list is broken down by the price range that the home you're flipping is within. So we've got just basic homes, more of like a standard $150,000 to $250,000 price range. I've got $250,000 up to, let's say, $500,000, $600,000, and then I've got custom homes where if you want to flip a custom home, there's some specific things that I really think it makes sense be in that home. But again, everything is market specific. So if you're thinking about selling a property, you're thinking about buying a property, let's take a look at what the norm is for that area before you go ahead and put a $25,000 kitchen into a $200,000 house. So let's have that conversation. My website, www.listingsincharleston.com, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. Bill, I wanted to ask you a question as it relates to Movement Mortgage and just some creative financing, because obviously when we look at flipping properties, we've got two routes. You can either pay cash for it or you can finance the purchase. So what options are there for creative financing as it relates to kind of renovation loans and doing this type of deal?
Of course. So Brian has an excellent outline of things that you need to focus on, things that you can do as an investor to get your house to get the maximum value out of it. Well, there are opportunities with loans, renovation loans, where you don't have to be a pro. You don't have to be a contractor. You don't have to have the experience, because you go in, you buy a house, and you pick out a contractor to do the work for you. You can move walls with these products. You can fix them up. You can put pools in the backyard. You can replace a roof. You can even knock a house down to its foundation and build it back up with more bedrooms. The loan programs are out there. There's FHA renovation loans. There's conventional renovation loans. And for really, really low rates, I mean, standard interest rates, you can be doing a flip.
That's cool. So what kind of percentage down do you typically have to put for these types of properties?
So for an FHA, where the only requirement here is that you intend to buy a primary residence. So if you were doing a flip, it might not be your conventional 1 month flip. It could be, I'm going to move into this house, I'm going to fix it up, live there for a year, and then sell it. 3.5%.
Wow.
So 3.5% down, and it's on the improved value. So the house purchase might be $100,000, and it's going to take you $50,000 of repairs to get up to where you want it to be. After those repairs are done, the house might be worth $200,000. So you're looking at an instant $50,000 of equity, and all you had to put down on that house was 3.5%.
Of the 100,000 or the 150?
Of the improved amount. So of the 150. Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
Very cool. As I'd mentioned, I've worked with a lot of investors over the years. Back in, I'd say from 2008 until now. But when our market was down in the dumps, most of what I did was short sales and foreclosures. And I've had the pleasure of working with a few hundred people to help them do that. So if you're thinking of making a purchase, or if this is the type of environment that you want to enter, I have some very specific information on what I think need to be requirements in order to move forward with the flip. We need to have a very clear understanding of the type of work to be done. We have to have a very clear understanding of what your percentage of return needs to be in order for it to make sense. And if you need help with that, if you need help with determining, how much should I expect when I flip a property? How much does it make sense for me to risk? And how much can I get for that? It's interesting to me when I see properties that were purchased and then rehabbed and then go back on the market, and then they sit there for 6 months, and the pricing or the things that were done to the house are just way out of line. It just seems to me like they are kind of flying by the seam of their pants, or they were just uncoached. And I think that it goes a long way when you work with a real estate agent that really understands that environment, because at the end of the day, time is money. And if you can get a blueprint like kind of what I have, it's just going to make your life easier.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I continue to hear when I listen to the radio about these real estate seminars, how you can, I'm giving air quotes, learn how to flip and sell real estate in a 2-day seminar that's free. Mm-hmm. And to me, those can be very misleading, because you go to the seminar, you learn about something, and then you're just out on your own. And I feel that so many people get taken advantage of. And, looking at you, Brian, I know that you have personally flipped many properties and have been successful at it. So you didn't just go to a seminar and learn about it or read about it in a magazine. You've done it. You've been in the trenches. And so you have success stories of your own that can speak for themselves.
Sure. Yeah, it's one thing to, I think, represent investors. I think it's another to be an investor that represents investors. So happy to provide you with this information that we've put together. We've got the toolkit, and it's actually based off a book called Flip, but we've also got an insurance checklist attached to it. So if you'd like that information, please visit our website, www.listingsincharleston.com, and I'll send this full toolkit right over to you. Just give me a good email address or a phone number, and we'll call and we'll talk about your situation. So thank you all so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it. I know that 8 o'clock on Saturdays can sometimes be a little bit early, but glad we were able to help at least one caller this week. Again, if you'd like to reach out to me, my phone number, 843-345-1273, or visit my website, listingsincharleston.com. When if you're thinking about buying or selling a house, contact me that way. Click on the Sellers tab, and you can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thank you very much, Bill of Movement Mortgage and Andrew Muller of Mappus Insurance Agency. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next weekend.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning from 8 till 9. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.